The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Forge Fitness and Nutrition LLC, the podcast hosts, owners, employees, contractors, partners, or affiliates. This presentation may include the use of explicit language. Listener or viewer discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to the Forge Fitness, Nutrition, and Habit podcast. I am your host, Michael S. Parker, and today I am joined by a wonderful lady who has been with one of our coaches for several years. She started back in 2021 and has had an amazing journey. And I am inviting her here today to share that with you. And hopefully you can glean something from it and improve your own fitness, nutrition, and habit lifestyle. Sarah Stapleton, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
We're glad that you're here as well. Tell us a little bit about what did life look like, or what did it feel like before you started really diving into structured fitness and nutrition? And of course, the habit aspect naturally has to go along with it. What were some of the physical, mental, or even emotional issues that you were contending with prior to starting?
Yeah. So I think that I kind of approached Forge in a different place than many clients might, because I almost had too much structure and needed help undoing it. So when I started, it was kind of midway through the COVID pandemic, and it was also a really critical point in my own mental health journey. So I had been kind of struggling with different mental health issues on and off for years. And in particular, around that point was kind of the pinnacle of about a decade-long eating disorder that I had kind of had in various forms and different severities and acknowledged to different amounts at different points. But COVID really brought that out because of just the virtual nature, and it was really all that I had to think about. So I remember in terms of what life looked like, I was midway through my undergraduate degree at university. And what I would be doing is I would have 3 different computer systems up. I would have one that had some kind of classwork going on, some kind of school related thing with my camera off. Then I would have another one where I was probably working some kind of part-time job. And then I'd have another one on with the camera off doing group fitness classes all day. So I was probably working out 7 hours a day, nonstop, not fueling appropriately for that at all. But it was my entire life was fixated on exercise and control and counting calories, and really quite a miserable existence, even though I wasn't aware of that at the time. And I initially tried to go with a different company in terms of just what I thought I was looking for. And I went into this, it was another virtual coaching company, and it was specifically around bodybuilding, because in my head, I was I can gain weight as long as it's only muscle and that's it. That the individual I was paired with was supportive of that, but really didn't understand the eating disorder and actually made it a lot worse in the process because they were very fixated on that particular goal. And I just got to the point where I was doing that and doing the same things. I was just working out more in different ways. And I was like, this is not actually working. And so I ended up finding Forge because I was looking to actually make a difference. And I remember coming into my initial call with you and saying, I'm sure that most clients are saying the opposite, but I need help moving less and eating more. That was really where it started, was just this, it was months and months of just weakening and draining my body and getting injured, and initially having a chronic injury as well, because I was running so often that I was aggravating issues in my Achilles and my low back, just lots of injury caused from the constant working out and not eating enough. So really not a good place before Forge. But you guys were kind of the first people that I connected with that felt like I could be just my holistic self with, and not just have it be about exercise in a box, which is really what I think my lifestyle was prior to Forge.
I recall the time that you and I met, and you told me that you were doing that level of exercise. I remember very specifically that I said that it might be too much. And it was clear to me when you and I were having our discussion, because I think we had that was back in, I think you and I actually met late February, because I think you took you took a week or two, and then I think that's when you actually started. And we had discussed on our call that I felt that Millie was a really good fit for you. And it turned out that was true. And I'm really happy that worked out. And it is true that too much of a good thing can be extraordinarily destructive. When did you realize that you were overdoing it, that it was just too much and you had to back down?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a bit of a gradual piece. I didn't realize it for a very long time, to be quite honest. It was a while, and it also wasn't the first time. So I had a similar eating disorder in high school, and the culminating point of that was I actually ended up in a coma. I knew I'd been down that road before. When I was out of the hospital in that time, I still wasn't done with it and ended up kind of stuck in this binge eating pattern just because my body was reacting to not eating enough. So, and then ever since that, I'd been kind of struggling between restricting and binging kind of for my whole life. I think in terms of recognizing when it wasn't working was just, I think the amount of kind of negative emotionality that was tied to my workouts, and that if I missed one or if I had to eat a meal and I couldn't plan it, I was breaking down. It was the amount of control and rigidity that I needed that was just completely not sustainable. And it had become, in a way, I wouldn't use the word sustainable, but it had become almost easy to maintain because of COVID. I could plan every aspect of my life. And I think if I had tried to bring that into the real world and out of COVID, like there's no way I could have functioned as a person. So I think it was probably a mix of like coming towards the end of COVID combined with just the chronic injury that I was like, I want to be able to use my body. And then just again, the emotional kind of weight of every decision related to exercise and food, that if anything was missed, I was not okay at all.
A lot of people don't think about fitness nutrition in a very sustainable way. There's this all or nothing fallacy that kind of happens in the mindset of most Westerners, which is if they're not doing the most extreme, the most hardcore, the most current modern diet, whatever is the most prevalent on whatever social media within social groups, that you're not doing good enough, that you can do more. And that if you work harder, if you beat your body up, if you do all these kinds of crazy things, that you're going to see results faster and better. And did you find that that wasn't true for you over time?
Yeah. I saw particular quote unquote results. And I think a lot of those results were like me harming myself like in actuality. And the main result actually wasn't anything to do with my body. It was a mindset shift. Like that was far more important than anything to do with my body. And I think the other piece to this too, so I'm a singer. I was doing my undergrad in music at the time, and I'm actually doing my PhD in music now and still performing pretty frequently. So that has always been very, very tied to this as well, because when you sing, like your instrument is your body. So the condition of your body is really reflective of your instrument and its capacity. And I remember also really struggling to sing around that time, like before Forge, and just not knowing why. And in hindsight, it's quite obvious. But at the time, I was just like, something's off. Like I can't get my body to work and I don't know why. And because you're just so deep in it that you don't always realize. So the mindset shift was huge. And it wasn't anything to do with like visual results. It was a shift from rigidity to flexibility, really.
There is a disassociation that people have with aesthetic results and functional results. One of the things that we've worked hard on, and I know Millie worked with you on this as well, which is to find a balance where there's an equilibrium of sustainability, where you are able to function at the highest level, and the natural byproduct of your performative aspect is that you look good. Most people's catalyst to start is usually aesthetic. I think it's composition. They want to lose weight. They want to gain muscle. They want to look this way or that. Those things are all fine, but those are extrinsically motivated. They're an end result. And that end result, sometimes the path to that outcome is extremely treacherous, dangerous, and maybe not even worthwhile. A lot of people are struggling to bring their mindset around that. I know it's a little trite because I say this all the time, and remaking yourself is the whole theme of what we do at Forge. But the basis of it is mindset. That's mostly what we really do. Every one of our coaches are dedicated to changing the way that people think about fitness and nutrition and their behaviors that are around it. And that sometimes can be really challenging for people because it can be adversarial to bias. For example, you're like, I just got to do a ton of cardio and I need to start tracking everything. And every macro and every calorie has to go into whatever app that I'm using to track. And then my workouts have to be intense. And it starts to get out of control. Would you say that that's like a reasonable assessment of where you were, just that level was out of control?
Yeah. And I think too with kind of the mindset piece, and in terms of almost the aesthetic as well, I think what it really came down to is that when you're in that state, no matter what you do, even if you're changing your body, even if you are exactly the goal that you set for yourself, you're still not happy because you fundamentally hate your body. Like that was really where it came from, is like the shift was that it turned from no matter what I do, I'm going to hate my body, to no matter what I do, I'm going to love my body because I can appreciate what it's doing for me, and how it looks is really a byproduct, and how it looks is going to shift based on what are the demands of my life at this point, what are my goals in my life at this point. And if my body can do those things, that became what mattered to me, which was a like 180 shift from before, where I really didn't I just pushed my body to do whatever, like I was head driving my body and not listening to it, and I had no relationship with it, which was really, I think, the problem.
Right. That was the disassociation that I was mentioning earlier, is we just completely are in opposite ends on what is appropriate, or at least reasonable. And one of the things that I've always been empathetic to is that the mindset around and the pressure around a certain physical appearance, it's so subjective. I'll give you an example. Okay. I was just on a call literally today with a very long-term client of mine, and her and I were discussing this subjectivity around rating physical attraction. She asked me to rate her on a scale of 1 to 10. And I told her, no, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. And I gave her my reasons, and it's threefold. First is, beauty is completely subjective. Some people have preferences. There are things that people prefer, and there are things that people don't. And that's not just in physical appearance, it's also in behavior. The second thing is, I want her to consider that she already is working towards being the best that she can, and you can't rate that. The third reason is because no matter how I answered that, and this is what made her laugh, is like, I'm screwed. If I give a low rating, I'm screwed. If I give too high a rating and she disagrees, I'm screwed. So I told her, no, not doing that. Plus, I'm not big on rating physiques on scales of 1 to 10 personally. I just think that it's a little shallow and subjective. In other contexts, it's totally fine. Like, for example, you're a figure competitor, a bodybuilder, a bikini model. Okay, that makes sense. But day-to-day people, I don't know if that's necessarily constructive. So I avoid creating those classifications and ratings, because I have a general philosophy, which is that we should be working out and eating well because we love our bodies, not because we hate our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really difficult mind shift for people to consider that they should be in love with themselves. And I'm not talking about arrogance or egotism or narcissism or whatever word you want to use to prescribe to that. What I'm talking about is being objective, looking at your genetic predisposition and trying to maximize that as best you can based on what it is you're intending for your life. If you're a professional musician or a vocalist, you need to have diaphragmatical control. You need to have intercostal pressure in the core system. You need to have posture for the shoulders. There has to be retraction and depression. You have to make sure that you're able to open up and that you can have a high VO2 max so that you have good breath control. These things are really important specifically to that outcome. Whereas if you're a marathon runner, you need to breathe and have good diaphragmatical control, but for different reasons and for different durations. So people should be looking at how to improve themselves based on their unique situation and what their intended outcome is. And I don't think we do really well with that as a society. I think we use a broadsword when we should be using scalpels for ourselves. We should be paring off little pieces that are like, this is important to me and I must make this work for myself. And we have a real problem. Again, my social media stance, everybody who knows me knows this. I think that group think is probably one of the most dangerous things ever. Mob mentality is something that's been feared for literally millennia in our cultures. And then now we've moved it all online and it's worse. So whereas your little community, right, back in, I don't know, you could go back a couple hundred years, how many people would live in your village or your town? It was a very small social circle, but now it's billions of people. And that is a dramatic shift in social behavior and interaction. And it creates all kinds of problems, what I would call associative problems, where, you look at somebody, you're like, I wish that I could look like him or her. I don't think that there's value necessarily in making a direct comparison. And I use this all the time. If you're 5'3", then you shouldn't be looking at a 5'11" supermodel, especially if your waist to hip ratio is a little different. There's nonsensical comparisons, and then we wrap identity around it, and then now we have disorders. But in your particular case, there was a translation to the actual practical application of your well-being into your profession, into your basically what I would say would be your life's work if you're going for PhD.
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of my research has turned into this connection between like embodiment and singing, because I had such a long period of my life where I was very like disembodied or cut off from myself. And, I think even more than that, like it was getting in the way of my ability to have relationships, like of any kind. Like I couldn't go out for dinner with friends unless I had the menu sent to me a week before so that I could plan the entire week's calories around that one dinner. Like it just was completely obstructive to having a life.
Right. When there's motivation, which is the catalyst for change. Then there's discipline, which is the sustainability and the consistency of application of stress to achieve an outcome. And then there's obsession. And once you go into obsession, it creates all kinds of disordered patterns. One of the biggest is the disassociation between mind and body, which you had mentioned. I find that to be a little bit of a tragedy, quite frankly, because the body follows the mind. Mm-hmm. And if you're mentally punishing yourself or obsessing over what ends up being inconsequential, then all of that strife, the stress, the anxiety, the depression, the self-loathing, there's the self-esteem issues, the undulation of mood, all of that stuff isn't worth it. Yeah. And you experience that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I also noticed this was a little bit kind of throughout the Forge piece, but like, because obviously you don't undo that mentality very quickly. Like it definitely took years, I would say. And it's, still something I occasionally grapple with, but it also really showed up in the people that I was surrounding myself with. Like the first several years I was in, like I didn't have a lot of boundaries in relationships. I, in particular, was in a fairly abusive romantic relationship. And then kind of after doing that level of work, managed to get into like the first healthy relationship of my life. And that person is now engaged to me. So like that made a really big difference too, just in terms of setting myself up to be around other people who treat me well, because I got used to treating myself well. And when that narrative wasn't present for me, I wouldn't expect that from other people either.
Totally reasonable. And what I would expect.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, coming back to it though, obviously there was a moment, something changed, right? Maybe we can go into that a little bit more. Obviously it was at some time between this person that you're dealing with and before you and I met, and then you went with Coach Millie. What made you Was it one moment, or was it kind of a lead up that said, I'm done. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I need to make a change. Was there a specific event or a thought or a moment? What pushed you to take that step to where you're like, I got to get this fixed. I got to do something proactive.
Yeah. And honestly, I wish I had a little bit more clarity on the singular moment. The fact of the matter is I don't have a lot of clarity on even memory at that time from how little I was eating. But I think the injury was a major motivator because I couldn't abuse my body anymore. Like having an injury that wouldn't go away, that just kept coming back, and I couldn't seem to fix it. And I do think also like working with another person who like almost having the same mentality that I had in an unhealthy way, but having another person like feed that back to me with the company prior, that something about that was really kind of jarring. Like, because it's one thing to kind of be locked in that yourself. It's another to have a relationship with another person. And honestly, a moment which it was after I had made contact with Forge, but I think actually what got me to go forward with it was our initial conversation. I had this really distinct memory of you, and I don't know how you phrased it. Like you phrased it in a good way. But the message of it was basically you telling me that I seemed sick. Like you were like, something's actually wrong here. And you were almost the first external person to kind of give it to me straight, that it's like, yeah, no, you thinking that you're sick and something's wrong, that's true. You need help. And you did it in a way that wasn't as blunt as I probably just put it, but it was enough that it kind of gave me a bit of a shake and was like, yeah, okay, so you're thinking something's wrong. It is. Let's try this.
I do remember that. And it wasn't that blunt, but it was direct.
Yeah.
It was essentially what it comes down to is that we know deep down inside when something is just wrong and something's not working, we're not well. And the fact that you had already exposed your disordered eating at the time to me, and I knew about your interest in profession. We talked about singing and whatnot. And I think I've even told you that I'm a muddling musician. I'm not very good, but I like to try. I feel like not everybody has to have some burning bush, lightning in the sky, cathartic moment to make change. Sometimes it's the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And that seemed to me like that's where you were. You were very layered. And it wasn't even nuanced. It was in your face. It was very clear to me, as far as I can tell, a series of events that just led you to being like, I'm tired. I'm done. I'm done feeling this way. I'm done with the mindset that's around this. And getting started is hard because, so here's the thing. You were started, but you were started in the wrong way. You had the consistency. You were willing to put in the work, but it was the wrong kind. I think that's what we had concluded when we were discussing is like, you have everything that you need already. We just have to change the way you think about what fitness and nutrition is, and you need to be well. When you wake up in the morning, you feel joy, not dread.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really common.
And I think too, like working, I think too, when you paired me with Millie specifically, it was also very much it felt like this is a relationship that's not about my body, which I'd never really seen in fitness circles either. Like it felt like it was about me as a person and not me as a body. And that, I think that also made a big difference in why I was able to stick to it, is like, it was the first time that I felt really like valued and seen as just Sarah, and not like Sarah's muscles or caloric intake or whatever else.
A series of algorithms. You're not a series of algorithms. The body does respond to a series of stress-based algorithms. That's called the general adaptation syndrome, but that's independent. That's a physiological response to stress. It's not an emotional one. Now, neuromuscular facilitation can cause neural pathways to cause mood change, but you needed to step back and what it was, Sarah, you need to just fall in love with yourself a little bit. That's what it was. You got to love you. And you're worthy of that. And I'm so excited to hear that now you're engaged and that mind shift has allowed you to have more functioning and, what would we say, fruitful relationships that are complementary to what you're trying to achieve in your life. I think that's great. Now, when it comes to the getting started point, you were already, I could say neck deep, right? So in your situation, it wasn't so much about what was so hard about starting your journey and getting past it for you. It was, how do you change trajectory when you have all of this baggage that you're dragging behind you?
Yeah.
Maybe we can focus in your case on that, because I think that that's really what the issue was, is you were on the wrong path. And the worst part about it was the whole time you thought you were going in the right direction, because that's what we've been told, right? Like, count your calories and don't miss your workouts. And the more you work, the better return. And all the stuff that you hear, and everybody hears a different level of it depending on what their, I guess you could say, circle of their sphere or circle of influence and contributors to their lifestyle are. And like you said, that's changed for you. Like, you have different relationships now. That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about that then, like that maybe the crossroads, right? When you could have taken the path that was going to be destructive and you made that decision. Like, tell me about what was hard about that when you started with Millie. Let's do that.
Yeah. So I think honestly, the absolute biggest hurdle was the knowledge that I would have to gain weight at the time. Like that
Mm.
was terrifying. And the weight that I was, again, in hindsight, like if I see pictures of myself, I'm like, you look awful. Like you look so sick. You should not look like that. But at the time, it was like, I absolutely cannot be bigger than that. And I'm still too big. And that was really quite pervasive at the beginning. Honestly, what we did initially, if I'm recalling correctly, is I would kind of say, okay, this is what you're doing now. And let's say I was doing like 10 workouts a day. And Millie would say like, okay, can we get that to 8 to 7 or 8? Like it wasn't like it was the gradual nature of it that allowed me to get back because, yeah, like doing the work has never been the problem. I've always been kind of your stereotypical type A overachiever kind of person. So, it was a lot of like, how are we taking what we're doing, still making sure we're doing things. And then same with eating, like gradually eating a little bit more. Shifting the focus away from counting calories was really big for me. Like we did a little bit of discussion on macros and pieces like around nutrition, but needing to kind of get rid of the calorie counting piece and apps was really big. And then also kind of if you're not working out, like what are you replacing that time with? And I've always had so many hobbies and interests and things that I'm passionate about. So we would have discussions on that piece too. And like when you would have been working out, like could you be doing XYZ that you love, like instead of just having the focus on fitness? So that was a big piece too, was like really integrating my, again, more of me and my personality into the whole plan. And the plan was never just about working out and exercise. It was about me as a whole.
Mm-hmm. That's really difficult. I have a couple comments to make as it relates to over counting calories, obsessive counting of calories. And we've worked with so many different people that we try and guide people into constructive behaviors surrounded nutrition so that we can get them away from obsession or disordered thought processes and essentially change the relationship with food. Millie was also very smart about weaning you down off of your workouts because it would have created something called coaching resistance. It's actually a real thing. You can look it up. And it's where a coach knows what you need to do. They tell you need to do it and you don't want it. And we have to be really careful of that. The whole idea is we want to make it personal. And I'm glad that you got to experience that because I knew for a fact that Millie wasn't going to fumble. I knew that she was going to take you through a process, and her and I discussed it, of course. And I gave her a briefing after you and I think we had our discussion late February, and I gave her a briefing. And then I think somewhere around March, you ended up signing up in 2021. And I was really happy. I was really happy to see what you were able to do. It's just so difficult for people to get their heads around how we overcomplicate this and we make it a misery instead of a joy. And that can be it's such a killer of progress, and it creates illness, not just physical, but mental illness around something that should be incredible, something that should be kind of a no-brainer, right? You take your car to get its oil change, you make sure that you have air in your tires, at least I hope you do. And we're willing to maintain other things, but then we could just be woefully neglectful of our own selves, a way that we think and the way that we approach things. And it can be so destructive to what we're really trying to accomplish. And you just basically, you said enough is enough. But here's the thing, Sarah, the compliment that I want to give you is that you were not obstinate to the point where it was to your detriment. Despite those high level of, and we can be clear, they were obsessions. Nobody should be doing 10 group exercise or any workouts at that degree per day. I have a random memory that just came up. I think you were with Millie for somewhere near a year, and you were finally, I can actually pull your program up and we can look, but it was somewhere after a year and you were just on a normal, sustainable workout protocol. It took a while. Oh, let's talk about that. Can you tell people a little bit about reasonable expectation?
Yeah. Like a couple times a week, I had like some kind of strength-based piece. Well, it depended on what I was training for, actually. It was variable, but in kind of a more strength piece, maybe 4 times a week of strength. If I wanted to do something every day, it was stretching. I had some kind of functional movement, usually like TRX or like different things with kind of like foam rolling. A lot of focus on actually like ease and muscle relaxation as opposed to just strength, like having that balance. And then when it was running, like even when I was marathon training, it was like, most days a week, but not every day, big focus on strength on stretching. And then if you're doing running, you're not doing that much strength, like kind of picking one goal at a time in that particular season, and always a focus on the rehabilitation piece. So it's not just about the movement.
Now let's continue on the path of reasonable expectation. Reasonable expectation for return. Did you learn anything new about that? Like what it takes, like what's a real time frame, not social media time frame, not fitness influencer time frame, but like a real human being time frame. Did you find, I guess I have actually 2 questions in this because I'm kind of curious to see how it went with you because everybody's a little different. So maybe I'll give you that question and then I'll ask a follow-up.
Yeah. To be honest, like I've almost shifted my idea of time frame. Like I think before it was always like, let's get to this goal. And now it's like goals are almost like postmarks along the way as opposed to like an end thing. Like, I don't think there is a timeline anymore. I think it's this kind of continual evolution of self where there's kind of check boxes along the way, like you reach this milestone, but it's not the end. And before it was always like the end is this weight, and then you get there and then you stay there forever, which doesn't make any sense. But this feels a lot more fluid. Like, I don't think like the concept of a goal weight now would be unheard of to me. Like, I don't even look at what I weigh at the doctor anymore. I don't know, and I don't care. It's really like, can I do this thing that I want to do? Can I continue to keep my body moving? As I'm getting older, there's going to be changes in my body. That's going to change what I do. Like, it doesn't make sense for a fixed goalpost when your body is not a fixed thing. So I think I've completely just shattered the idea of an endpoint. To give a bit more around your question, I think in terms of getting stronger, like takes a few months. If you are doing something brand new, you're going to get better faster than if you've been at this like a similar thing for a year, and then you'll want to switch up the exercises you're doing to get stronger in that muscle group. But I think there's a bit of exponential growth. Like when you first start working something out, you're going to see rapid improvements, and then it steadies out over time. But that doesn't mean that you're not getting stronger in other ways. And I think like, for example, building resilience is something that I've needed for my life now for sure. And that I got a lot of from doing those workouts that did take more time to see that difference.
Yes. Everything that you just said is extraordinarily valuable. And I hope people watching or listening take that to heart, because having intrinsically motivated goals always beat out extrinsic goals over time. For those of you who aren't aware, an extrinsic goal is essentially something that is an end result, like Sarah just said, a weight, whereas an intrinsic goal means that the joy comes from the journey itself, and you see improvements through waypoints, and there may never actually be an end to that. I'll give you an example. I can be really direct and crass, but I just will be. We're all going to die. It's a terrible, terrible reality. And I don't think that there's ever a point in time that anybody should stop exercising their body and their mind ever. And it should never end. So there's no finish line. And this is, people don't like this. They really struggle with this concept because everyone wants something for something. They want the transaction. We all know that we have an expiration date. It's sad, it's true, and we have to deal with it. It's not intended to be morbid. You have to remember that our lives will continue till we die. What is the quality of your life going to look like is my challenge. What do you do every single day that is going to foster or facilitate a better capacity when you're 70, 80, and hopefully in your 90s? Why not get to 100, right? If that's your goal. And my wife, Heather, she has this very, very serious goal in her head. And she says that I want to live to be 100 years old. I just feel like I want triple digit for my age. But I want to be able to know that I'm 100. I want to be able to walk. I want to be able to interact with friends or family. We have a fair amount of property, and her and I we're futzers. We futz around the property. We're always doing something at any given time. She wants to be able to do that to the day that she dies. Unfortunately, I think that we live in a world that is, at least in America, and maybe Canada to a degree, and some maybe Britain and in the UK, where everything is based on dopamine and instant gratification. I want it now, and I want to not pay for it, and I want it to be absolutely mind-blowing. We're just constantly fixed on this dopamine. We're always looking for the outcome. What's the payoff? Like when do I get to win? What's in it for me? And I'm like, that's just not the way that fitness works. Your well-being doesn't work that way. Yes, you can create extrinsic goals. Totally reasonable. I don't like weight as an extrinsic goal. I think I hate using these words we overuse words now in social media and all over the place, but the word toxic would be appropriate here. But it is toxic to the way that we think when we're constantly chasing some kind of so why did you decide that you should weigh X? Right? Sarah, didn't we talk about that? I think we did.
Probably.
Remember,
Yeah.
I said, where did you make up? What was the foundation for you saying that I need to be this weight? Where did you make that up from? Because you made it up. No one did. And it's always, it's an association to an emotion. It's in high school or in college, I was at this level or I was at this rate and I felt this way. And so therefore at that weight, that's the only way that I can be that way again. And it's false. Do you feel like that's usually?
Yeah, I think like in terms of my personal circumstances, the weights I was aiming for were not weights I ever would have naturally achieved outside of probably childhood.
Sure.
Like they were too low for that even. But a lot of that I was getting from like those like BMI calculators online. And then a lot of really kind of nasty forums that were definitely promoting eating disorders on, like, it was a lot of just the internet, honestly, and being like, this is what someone's supposed to, and it was like, if you're this height, you can't be heavier than this, or that's bad. Like a lot of that, which is very icky to me now. Like, I don't like to think about that, but that is where it came from.
No, that's absolutely true. Coming back to expectations for return, I think that if people are smart about the way that they set their goals and they're reasonable about the time frame, so the goal isn't necessarily unreasonable if it's healthy. right? So that there has to be, I have to give a caveat to that because you and I, considering who I'm talking to, you and I both know that 98 pounds is not an appropriate weight. So we don't want to make that a goal. Now, look, muscle-based weight, if you're going to go get a DEXA scan and you're like, I want to weigh X amount of muscle, skeletal muscle in comparison to body fat, because that's something that I'm interested in maximizing. I want to have as much lean muscle on me as I can. And let's say your goal is, I'm just going to use an easy multiple of 10. So I want to be 100 pounds of muscle. But I know as my height, my weight, my age as a woman, I'm probably going to be 130 pounds and the rest can be fat and bone and organs. It's pretty aggressive. I'm using that as an extreme example. That's about as extreme as I'm willing to allow a client to go. Right? So when you talk about constructive weights, well, adding lean muscle is constructive, but focus on your total body weight without any recognition to the distribution between tissue types. Now you've got a problem, and that can become disordered because there's usually something associated to it. I'm just going to make up again. I'm going to say if I weigh 100 pounds as a woman and I'm an adult, that's not appropriate unless you're 4'11", So it's just, it's so difficult. And that's the problem, is that nobody looks at the individual. No one's looking at the person. They're just, the BMI, by the way, is a travesty in modern medicine. The fact that it even exists and is a marker is abhorrent to me. And I have physicians that work with me. I have clients that are doctors, and I say, what can you do to get rid of this nonsense? I'm sorry, I don't have a citation or a reference for this, but there was somebody had once given a doctor the BMI of a series of celebrities. And the doctor was basically, this was in the 80s when they did this, but it was from the 70s. The doctor basically was saying whether or not that person was overweight. And they did the calculations on this one gentleman who was, I think, 6'1.5", 6'2", 230 pounds. And the doctor basically said that this person is morbidly obese. That person was Arnold Schwarzenegger when he won the Olympia. So how could he be obese? He was unhealthy in the wrong way, the other way. So extremes are what I just don't like in our industry, right? In the fitness and nutrition industry, everything's so freaking extreme. And I know why. Well, be patient. I have to say it. The reason is because it sells. People are so desperate. And fitness and nutrition companies, social media influencers, they prey on people. Literally, it's predatory. It's, you are in pain. You are in a situation that you don't know how to get out of. It's more complicated than you ever could have imagined. It's just too much. It's overwhelming. And there's internal emotional pressures. There's societal pressures. There's other things that are happening. And now we've got these people who are trying to leverage a fad that's extreme in order to gain business on a short-term basis. I find it to be repulsive, quite frankly. Now, when it comes down to reasonable expectations, this is the piggyback question that I had for you is, when you are working on something now for your well-being, are you more objective about when you're going to be able to achieve it? Do you put better timeframes on your goals?
Yes. And I think I've almost shifted to a place in my life where it's like, I'm not, let's say, training for anything. Right now, as in before it was like, I want to run a half marathon and that needs a particular timeline. I'm in a particular stage of my life right now where it's just like, I want to feel well. So it's a little bit different than even having the timeline on it. Kind of like other goals have emerged in my life that I hadn't been able to consider because of Forge, that are much kind of bigger picture. And that has changed the way that I move and work out now. And it is much more like, I am enjoying moving my body than I am working towards a particular outcome. And I'm sure there are stages in my life where that will change. But right now, it's slower. And I think too, when I was kind of when I did have more goal oriented pieces between early Forge and now, I would say it definitely got into a longer time frame, but the goals changed. Like it was less about something that had to be that specific, and it was more like, I need to rebuild a relationship with my body, which is a lifelong project and not a temporary do this thing.
In perpetuity. It's forever.
Yeah.
It's forever. Your body is the vessel of your consciousness, your soul, whatever you want to call it. And the level of neglect that we see, at least in the Western cultures, is just very difficult. It's very difficult for me to watch because it's so self-destructive and obvious. And people know. See, that's the thing too, Sarah. It's not so much that there's a lack of information. There's just too damn much of it. And most of it's wrong. And one of the things that I've always been an advocate for, and I'll never stop being an advocate for, is to create sustainability in an intrinsic way where you are at any given time able to say, yes. Sarah, do you want to go hike Machu Picchu? Sure, I can do that. Do you want to do X, Y, Z, as you said? What do you want to accomplish? And is your body ready to do it? And if it's not necessarily because it's a training output, like say, like you said, it's a training issue, right? So you're training for a marathon, a half marathon, or you're training for like I don't know, a Spartan race or Tough Mudder, whatever cycling event. Maybe you need to refocus what your protocols around what you're stressing your body with for outcome, for adaptations for a period of time, but it's a very, very small window. So it's not couch to 5K. It's in 2 weeks, I'll be ready to hike, or in whatever time frame is reasonable, right? I feel like that being able to say yes to any physical demands is really freaking cool. It feels amazing. I'll make this one point about expectations and what it is like to get your head around it. And then I want to go into some of your breakthrough moments here, but I just wanted to mention that lifestyle is equally important to your physical appearance. Like, what can you do? What's your capacity? And also, are you able to manage that? For me and Heather, particularly, we live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. So some of the best restaurants in the world are here. We're acquaintances with Chef Graham Elliott, which is great. We go to all of his restaurants all the time. He's on Master Chef as a friend of Gordon Ramsay. Haven't met Gordon yet, but I really think that working towards a lifestyle is super important. And being able to go out to a dinner and not getting the menu a week ahead of time because you're obsessing about what you're going to eat and making sure that the calorie ratio is correct and all of that stuff is a detractor against joy. And being able to be intuitive. The word that I think Millie had used with you was intuitive, because her and I had a discussion about this. We wanted to get you to a place where you could eat intuitively without having to overly track. I know that people don't think about the future as it relates to their fitness. They're thinking about today, right now, and how their body's feeling. Like, what am I craving? And, I want to eat this, or, I won't eat too much. And it's all about the now. It's all about the now. It's just not going to work for people long term. But unless you have any comments on what I just said, I want to ask you about some of your breakthrough moments.
Yeah, go for it. I think things might circle back too.
It wasn't your body. Well, your body wasn't holding you back, other than your injury, the one that was acute that became chronic. And if you're willing to, you can share about that. But what I find is that while people sometimes can't necessarily recall what caused them to start something that is structured with a definitive purpose, not necessarily like to lose weight, but with purpose, like intention. Like, I am doing this because I want to do, and it's not just one thing, it's a category of things. When did you have like maybe one or two of your like big breakthrough moments? Do you have a couple moments that you could share?
Yeah, there's so many. And like I actually have one within the last 30 days too. Like they're still happening. One of them is the biggest, which I'll probably talk to last, but initially, like a really big one for me was that and this is again falling right into that rigidity piece. There was a time, probably like in 2019 or so, where I was reading the back of a spinach bag and I was obviously just trying to promote vegetables. And it was like 50% of your plate should be vegetables. Like that was what it said every time. And in the throes of the eating disorder, what that translated to for me was I have to eat spinach, like a bite of spinach for every other bite of food I take forever. And the first meal I ever had without spinach was like world breaking. Which like, it sounds very silly and high, but it was like years of needing spinach, like to feel safe eating. So like, I think probably like a first time having dessert without spinach, but also just like dinner without spinach was like, I used to have to layer it on my plate. So I knew it would be there like a safety blanket kind of thing. So that's one that sounds a bit silly, but was massive at the time. And my kind of like now equivalent of that is, there were certain foods historically that were always like binge foods. Like it was like, if I eat one of these, I'm having it like nonstop and I won't be able to control myself. One of those was like Doritos, which I don't even really like that much, but that was just something that I associated with like, this is the binge. And so I hadn't eaten Doritos in like 10 years because I was so scared around them. And I went to this Halloween party like this year and I had Doritos for the first time since like before Forge. And I had like 2 handfuls and I was like, okay, those are kind of fine. I don't really want them any more than that. And I was like, whoa, you can just do that. That's so cool. Because you're like listening to your body and you're like, does that taste good? It's fine. I'd kind of rather have fruit actually, but it's fine. And there's some junk foods that I love. Like I love ice cream. I will always like ice cream. So being able to get ice cream without thinking about it is a big one. Mm-hmm. And I think also just, which took some time, this wouldn't have been in the early stages of Forge, but towards the later stages, being able to just go into the gym and work out without a plan was a big piece. Like knowing that I could follow the structured plan and then knowing that I knew enough and had enough like understanding of my body that I could sometimes just go because I felt like it and do what I wanted. Like, again, it's a lot of that getting away from the rigidity that was big for me rather than necessarily keeping the structure.
Yeah. Agility yes, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
I was about to just like, that's a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like by far the biggest one, which has completely changed every aspect of my life was, this would have been actually decided during Forge, I'm pretty sure, whether or not I would have explicitly told Millie or not. I had spent most of my life really wanting children and just being under the assumption I would always have to adopt for sure. I could never, ever get pregnant. the weight gain that would cause. Like I couldn't do it. I would be worried about starving myself and harming the baby. Like that was a huge piece. And like during my time with Forge, I was able to get to a place where I was like, no, actually, I want to have my own kids. And I actually started the process for that. And that has been a lot more challenging than I would have expected, because I realized that I had fertility issues kind of in the process of doing that. But that has been my life for the last year and a half. And like I'm now on round 5 of IVF. I've had moments where I can't move my body and I'm okay with that. I've had like eating shifts towards like eating as well as I can in preparation for fertility and not having that trigger disordered eating. And I'm able to like work with my body in a way that I'm okay with showing a child, like, this is how you can use your body, and not worried about like, I always thought I'd kind of pass on bad behaviors, and I'm not scared of that anymore. Like that is by far the biggest thing that has changed my life for sure.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful story. And I have no doubt that you're going to be a wonderful mother. And I really hope that that comes to fruition for you. I really do. That's awesome, by the way. And you having that breakthrough where you're like recognizing, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here, so tell me if I'm wrong. Your body is going to be the vessel for another human being for a while. And you got to keep it tight, keep it clean, and create an environment in which it thrives. So you have the healthiest baby that you possibly can. But my encouragement to you is that you will get back into shape. You will recover from the pregnancy. That is my standing comment that I always make to ladies when they're like, I want to get pregnant, or I am pregnant. It's like, listen, when the baby comes, you will get back where you need to be. You'll be strong. You'll be fit. Women have been doing this for millennia, and you'll be fine. I'm really excited to hear that. So I'm keep us in the loop on that. I know we had already talked a little bit about the impact that this has had on your life and your outside of fitness. You talked about singing. We've talked about your relationships, but you're in a unique situation because you've gone to the extreme. And I think that a lot more people are there than they'd care to admit. You just are brave enough to say, "Hey, I'm a little off the rails here. I'm being over. What do the kids say? I'm being extra about this." I know that when we talk to folks in either consultations, and my client base is so established that I don't really deal with this so much anymore. But historically, I'm coming on 25 years in the industry, but my coaches are constantly telling me, oh my gosh, I'm really struggling with this particular person. And the things that I'm hearing these young men and women talk about, the way that they have been manipulated to believe what fitness and nutrition should be, or is, it's so disheartening. And I think that a lot of people are now stuck in this cycle of fitness failure where they think that there's no alternatives, that they're never going to make it, that they need Ozempic, or that they need some supplement, or they have to do something extreme. And I find that to be just so disheartening. So if somebody's listening and they feel stuck or they're unsure where to start, you've been through the ringer. What advice would you share with people?
Yeah. I think honestly, the biggest thing that changed for me, because I would have just continued, like a lot of advice I would say now, I wouldn't have listened to at the time. So if I put myself back where I was, the biggest thing that I think I needed was find a partner in this journey, like a fitness partner, as in like whether that's a coach, whether that's a friend, a mentor, whatever that looks like, who cares about you as a human being. Like that is really what it was for me, is find someone who cares about all of you. And that might be more than you've ever cared about yourself. And that might be really jarring. But the biggest piece is like knowing and allowing yourself to know yourself as a whole person, and not as like this shell who exercises and does things to your body. If I was asked that now, it would very much be like, is the goal you're setting rooted in love or rooted in hate? And always choose the loved one. But at that time, the loved ones wouldn't have existed. And I know that. So I would have needed that partnership to bridge me to a place where I could see that.
It's interesting because you had basically answered a question that I was planning to ask you, which was if you could go back to the former version of yourself before you started this, and you had some of these breakthrough moments, what would you say to that person? And I think you kind of just said it. Would you say something more to yourself if you could go back? Because you had just said something that is so important, which is, would you have even listened? And so maybe we can help people there.
Yeah. I think like what I would have needed at that time was I needed someone to listen to where I was, really. Like it was less about anything that was said to me and more about actually having someone show up enough to care that I was in that place and to see it as something that was harming me. As opposed to just, this is the way it is, this is what you have to do, which is very much the mentality that I think we're fed a lot, is like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. The universal you is not the personal you. So I needed, I think at the time, just someone to show up and figure out who I was, and not the generic you that social media or fitness advice or whatever else is pushing. And like, what is unique about you? What do you love? How are you making time to show up for what you love in your life? Are you at all? And like, how does movement and joy and food, which can be a thing of joy, like how does that show up for you in that? How are you in relationship with those things? Does it feel like a healthy relationship, same as it would with a friendship or a partner? Like, what is that is that for you? And just having that conversation. Like, I think I needed conversation more than advice. I needed to be heard. And I wasn't letting myself even hear myself at the time.
I think that that is a really good point. And if you're a fitness professional or a coach or whatever, and you're listening to this or watching, listen to what Sarah just said. If you want to be successful long term, you have to pay attention to the individual need. We live in a society that is very difficult to navigate the social pressures, and there's an impersonal sensation about everything. Everything feels so canned, scripted. There's a lack of authenticity. We have to be able to look ourselves in the eyes, in the mirror, and do an assessment. Where am I right now? Am I doing what I want in my life that is going to lead me to become the person that I'm striving to be? And I like to think, is my mind well? Is my body well? And do my behaviors connect the two? And that's different for everybody.
Yeah.
It's different for every single person. We have to meet people with where they're at. For you to give yourself that advice going back it's a pretty powerful statement. I think that's a really good way to say it.
I was just going to say on the authenticity piece, like something that really stands out to me, I think about having worked with Forge, I put a pause on my membership at one point because just several life circumstances were happening and I wanted a bit of a break. But like since that point, Millie and I have, like my coach, have exchanged emails like at least once a month. Like we're basically pen pals now. And like she feels like a friend who I absolutely do want to go back at some point. I've been kind of working with a particular specialist for something at this point, and that's why I haven't yet. But like nothing about that was like salesy or trying to get me to come back. It's just like we are two people that had a strong like working relationship together and actually care about each other. And I've never seen that in any other business where I've kept in contact with someone who I was in a professional relationship with, like ever. And that's been over a year now where we've just been like remaining close, and I'm excited to tell her updates and I'm excited to hear her updates. And like that is almost unheard of to me. And that really says something about the company.
I'm overjoyed to hear that. That's huge for me. Yeah, Millie's badass, man. All my coaches, like, to get hired at Forge is a 30-day hiring process. I'm not an asshole, but I have standards, man, and like I make mistakes. We're not a perfect company. We're small. We're really, really, really small. It's hard. It's really, really hard to compete. Our biggest competitors are 19, 20-year-old TikTok influencers. These kids aren't even certified and they have thousands of clients.
Yeah.
And they're selling the same generic template and they don't give a shit about anybody. It's all about money. It's all money. It's like I was saying, dirty industry, impossible to beat these little TikTokers and all these big social media stars. Like, I don't have 11 million followers on Instagram. In fact, I would say if I could criticize one thing about me and Forge, it's that I obstinately refuse to do social media in the beginning. And boy, was that a strategic mistake. I didn't honestly think that social media would become social currency. I didn't realize that it would get to the point where your followership was a validation of your ability. I did not realize that social media would literally become the worst high school toxic environment on the planet worldwide. I did not realize it was going to be a popularity contest. I didn't realize it was going to be about like what you drive, what you wear, and like, how like everything has to be perfect and you have to be hot. You have to like constantly be talking and posting content 3 or 4 times a day. Never thought that would happen. And I did not set us up very well to do that. This year though, we came into this year with like 600 followers on Instagram. We're almost near 4,000 now, just because I occasionally post something. And I'm just like, I'm rearranging my entire work schedule, everything to do more posts. But the problem is now everything's changed with AI. So now what we're doing is we're trying to jump ahead and utilize the AI. Because like, okay, I can post a reel on fitness, nutrition, or a habit educational concept that could be 90 seconds, right? Really good, hard hitting, interesting, something that's a top rated Google search. Nobody cares because they just went to ChatGPT already. It is so hard. When I first started the company, everybody told me that I was an idiot. People said, you're a fool. That'll never work. You can't do this online. Because back then there was like, I don't know. I think there's less than 100 online coaches when I started this thing. Now there's 150,000 more or more. So in just literally less than a decade, it's orders of magnitude of competition, and trying to get out there and show people we're not better. We're just different. And what's different is, you just said, is that Sarah Stapleton, I care about you very much. And I'm so pleased that you took an hour and a half out of your day to just come and chat with me about, your fitness journey, and something that most people probably wouldn't really want to do because it's exposing or whatever, but whatever, you did it. And I'm extraordinarily grateful. I'm so pleased that you came and spent this time with me. Is there anything that you would like to say to people who are listening or watching? Then maybe one little last motivational, like go out there and kind of get it done statement.
Yeah. I think really a lot of this is just coming to trusting yourself. If you have a gut feeling that you want something to change, trust it. And then set yourself up with people around you who will support you in doing that. And if a coach is a part of that team, that was the perfect fit for me, and it might be for you too.
My dear, it's been lovely to see you. I haven't seen you in a couple years, so this has been fun. My email is also always open to you. You know how to get a hold of me if you ever need anything. All Forge clients have direct access to me. And again, I'm so grateful for the time that you spent sharing your story and being part of the Forge family, honestly.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, my dear. Well, I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.